The moment she slid the divorce papers across the table, she was smiling. Not the kind of smile that comes from sadness or regret. This one was calm, controlled, almost satisfied, like she had already won something I didn't even know we were fighting over. I didn't touch the papers right away. I just watched her. The way she leaned back in her chair, the way her eyes stayed locked on me, waiting. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't unsure. And that was the first thing that felt wrong. "Go ahead," she said softly, tapping the edge of the papers with her finger. "It's already done. You just need to sign." Her voice was steady, almost rehearsed, like she had practiced this moment more than once. I finally reached forward, picking up the papers slowly, letting the silence stretch between us. She didn't interrupt it. She didn't rush me. That confidence told me everything I needed to know. Whatever she believed about this situation, she believed it completely. I flipped through the pages without reacting. My eyes moved across the words, but my mind wasn't focused on the legal terms. It was focused on her, on the way she watched me, expecting something. Maybe anger, maybe shock, maybe even desperation. But I gave her nothing. And that seemed to confuse her, just slightly. Not enough for her to lose control, but enough for me to notice. "You're not even going to ask why?" she said after a moment, her voice carrying a hint of irritation now. That was new. That was real. I looked up at her slowly, meeting her eyes for the first time since she handed me the papers. "I already know why," I said quietly. And that was the truth. I didn't need her explanation. I didn't need her version of the story. Because whatever she was about to say, it wasn't the real reason. She let out a small laugh, shaking her head. "You always think you know everything," she said, crossing her arms. But there was something behind that reaction. Something defensive. Something she didn't expect me to see. I leaned back in my chair, still holding the papers, still not signing. "No," I replied calmly. "I just pay attention." And that sentence landed harder than I expected it to. The room felt different after that. Quieter. Tighter. Like something invisible had shifted between us. She wasn't as relaxed anymore. Not completely. The control she walked in with, it started to crack. Just a little. But enough for me to see what was underneath. And that's when I realized something important. This wasn't just a divorce to her. This was a plan. A carefully built exit. And she believed she had already secured everything she needed. But she was wrong. And she had no idea yet. There was a time when none of this felt possible. Back when we used to sit on the floor of our empty living room eating takeout because we couldn't afford furniture yet. Back when she would laugh at things that didn't even make sense just because I was there. Those moments felt real. Simple. Untouched by whatever this had become. And for a long time I believed that was enough. We built everything slowly. Not overnight. Not easily. Every decision we made came with some kind of sacrifice. I worked longer hours than I ever thought I would. She supported me, at least on the surface. She used to say she believed in what I was building, that one day all the pressure, all the effort, it would turn into something bigger, something stable, something permanent. I believed her. Completely. But looking back now, I can see the difference.
I was building for the future. She was waiting for it to arrive. And those are not the same thing. One requires patience. The other requires expectation. And expectations, they change people when they aren't met fast enough. The first shift was small, almost invisible. She started asking different questions, not about how I was doing, not about how things were progressing, but about results, about timelines, about when things would finally pay off. At the time, I didn't think much of it. It felt normal, logical even. But something in her tone had changed. It wasn't curiosity anymore. It was pressure.
Then came the distance. Not physical at first, emotional. Conversations became shorter, colder. She stopped sharing things the way she used to. Stopped asking about my day. Stopped looking at me like I was still part of her future. And that kind of change doesn't happen all at once. It builds slowly, quietly, until one day you realize you're standing next to someone who feels like a stranger. I noticed everything. Every shift, every silence, every moment where something felt off. But I didn't react. Not immediately. Because reacting without understanding is just noise. And I needed clarity. I needed to see the full picture before I made a move. There were nights when she would stay up late on her phone, the screen lighting up her face in the dark room. I would watch from the other side, pretending not to notice. Not because I was afraid of the truth, because I already felt it. Something was changing. Something was moving without me. And the more I observed, the more certain I became. This wasn't just distance. This was preparation. She wasn't drifting away. She was positioning herself, and I was already too aware to be caught off guard. The moment everything became undeniable didn't come with a confession. It came with silence. A kind of silence that feels heavier than any words ever could. I remember sitting across from her one evening, trying to start a normal conversation, asking something simple about her day. She barely looked up, just gave short answers, detached, distant, like I was already someone she no longer needed to respond to. "You've been different," I said carefully, watching her reaction. She sighed, not surprised, not defensive, just tired. "I don't think anything's wrong," she replied. But that wasn't true, and we both knew it. You don't lose connection like that without something replacing it. You don't become that cold unless your attention has shifted somewhere else. That night I stayed awake long after she fell asleep, not because I needed proof, but because I needed to accept what I already felt. And acceptance is harder than discovery. It forces you to stop lying to yourself. It forces you to see everything clearly, even the parts you don't want to admit. A few days later, she finally said it. Not directly, not honestly, but clearly enough. "I think we need space," she told me, standing near the doorway like she didn't want to come any closer. Space. That word people use when they don't want to explain the truth. I nodded slowly, not reacting the way she expected, because by then I wasn't surprised. I was just confirming. "Is there someone else?" I asked quietly. The question hung in the air longer than it should have. She didn't answer immediately, and that pause told me everything. When someone is innocent, the answer comes fast. When they hesitate, it means they're choosing which version of the truth to give you. "It's not like that," she finally said. But it was exactly like that. It always is. I didn't push further. I didn't argue. I didn't demand anything. Because the moment betrayal becomes visible,
The damage is already done. Words don't fix it. Explanations don't change it. And reactions only make you lose control. Instead, I watched her. The way she avoided eye contact. The way her voice lacked certainty. The way she tried to make it sound reasonable, justifiable, like leaving was something she had no choice in. But she did. She chose this, every step of it. That was the moment something inside me shifted completely. Not in anger, not in sadness, but in clarity. She wasn't confused. She wasn't lost. She had already made her decision, and she expected me to accept it without realizing what she had just started. After that conversation, everything became sharper. Not louder, not more dramatic, just clearer. The kind of clarity that removes doubt and replaces it with certainty. She stopped pretending completely. The distance between us wasn't something she tried to hide anymore. It was something she leaned into. And I let her, because the more comfortable she became, the more she revealed. She started making decisions without including me. Small things at first, then bigger ones. Conversations about the future no longer involved us. They involved her. I noticed how easily she spoke about moving forward, as if the life we built together was already behind her. And every time she did, it confirmed what I already knew. This wasn't emotional. This was calculated. I began paying closer attention to details most people ignore. The timing of her calls, the way she guarded her phone, the subtle shifts in her routine. None of it was random. Patterns started forming, and patterns lead to understanding. I didn't need to confront her. I needed to understand how far she was willing to go without realizing what she was risking. There were moments when she almost looked at me like she expected something. A reaction, a confrontation, maybe even a breakdown. But I gave her none of that. And that silence confused her more than anything else. Because silence doesn't give answers. It creates questions. And she started asking them, even if she didn't say them out loud. Meanwhile, I started making my own decisions. Quiet ones. Invisible ones. The kind that don't draw attention until it's too late. I reviewed everything. Every document, every agreement, every detail we had built our lives on. And the more I looked, the more I realized how much she had assumed without actually knowing. She believed she understood the situation completely. That belief became her weakness. Days passed, and the tension between us turned into something unspoken but constant. She moved around the house like she already owned the outcome, like the ending was already decided. And maybe in her mind it was. But reality doesn't follow assumptions. It follows facts. And facts were something she hadn't fully considered. I could see it in the way she acted. The confidence, the certainty, the lack of hesitation. All of it pointed to one thing. She thought she was in control.
And that was exactly what I needed, because control, when built on incomplete understanding, doesn't last. It collapses the moment truth enters the room, and I was getting closer to that moment with every step she took. She just didn't know it yet. I looked down at the papers again, letting the silence stretch just a little longer before I finally picked up the pen. She was watching closely now, her confidence fully returned, almost impatient. In her mind, this was the final step, the moment everything she had planned would become real. And for a second, I let her believe that. I let her sit in that certainty. Then I signed. Not slowly, not dramatically. Just signed my name like it didn't matter. Like none of this mattered. And that confused her more than anything else. I could see it in her eyes, that small flicker of doubt she tried to hide. She took the papers from me quickly, scanning the signature as if she expected something different, something emotional, something reactive. But there was nothing. "That was easier than I thought," she said, trying to sound casual, but it didn't land the way she wanted it to. There was a slight tension in her voice now, a crack in the confidence she walked in with. I leaned back in my chair, watching her carefully, noticing every small shift in her expression. This was the moment where things began to change. "Yeah," I said quietly. "It should be." She frowned slightly, like she wasn't sure how to read that, like something about the situation didn't match the outcome she expected. And that's when I decided it was time. Not to argue, not to explain everything, just enough to let reality start breaking through. "You should probably check something before you leave," I added calmly. She looked up, confused. "Check what?" "The ownership records," I said, keeping my voice steady. Her expression changed instantly, not dramatically, but enough. Enough to show that something had shifted inside her. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her tone sharper now, less controlled. I didn't rush the answer. I let the silence sit again, letting her mind start filling in possibilities on its own. Because the truth hits harder when it builds inside someone before it's confirmed. "That house," I continued slowly, "was never in your name." She froze, completely still, like her body hadn't caught up to what she just heard. Her eyes searched my face, looking for something, a sign that I was joking, that I was bluffing. But I wasn't. "That's not possible," she said quickly, but the certainty was gone, replaced by something else, something closer to fear. "I transferred everything a long time ago," I replied calmly, "before any of this." The room felt different now, heavier, real. The control she thought she had, it slipped, slowly but visibly. And for the first time since you walked in with those papers, she wasn't the one in control anymore. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything we had said before. She stood there, still holding the papers, but they no longer looked like a victory in her hands. They looked like something fragile, something that had lost its meaning the moment reality caught up with her. I watched her carefully, not with anger, not with satisfaction, but with a kind of calm that only comes when you've already accepted the outcome. "You're lying," she said finally, but even she didn't believe it. Her voice lacked strength. It lacked the certainty she had walked in with. And that was the difference now. Before, she was sure. Now she was questioning everything. I didn't respond immediately. I didn't need to. The truth doesn't require urgency. It just needs space to settle. And I could see it happening in real time. Her mind trying to rearrange everything she thought she knew, trying to understand how something so important could exist outside her control. "I checked everything," she continued, her voice slightly louder now, like she was trying to convince herself more than me. "I made sure it was all in place." I nodded slowly. "I know you did," I replied. "You checked what you had access to." That sentence landed harder than anything else, because now she understood, not just what had happened, but how. The difference between knowing and assuming, and she had built everything on assumptions. Her grip on the papers tightened, but she didn't look at them anymore. She was looking at me, really looking at me, for the first time in a long time. Not as someone she had already left behind, but as someone she had completely misjudged. "Why didn't you say anything?" she asked quietly. I thought about that for a second. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because I wanted her to feel it. "Because you didn't ask," I said calmly.
That was the truth. She never asked. She assumed. She planned. She acted like the outcome was already decided. And in doing that, she removed the only thing that could have changed everything. I stood up slowly, pushing the chair back without breaking eye contact. The tension in the room had shifted completely now. There was no argument left, no fight, just consequences. You wanted to leave, I said quietly. Now you can. She didn't move, not immediately, and for a moment it felt like she wanted to say something else, something that could change this. But there was nothing left to say. Some moments don't allow rewrites. So I turned and walked away, not because I was angry, but because I was done. And the moment she handed me those papers, she thought she was ending my story. But she was actually ending her place in it. This story is fictional and created for entertainment purposes only.